Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's CJ. Welcome back to episode 8 of the Innovative Marine 75 EXT Reef build. As usual, we're picking up right where we left off. Last episode, if you're new to the channel or if you're not aware, this is a full build series, guys. So last episode, we did a full unbox and install and review of the brand new 06 Orphic lighting system. Before that, we did an in-depth walkthrough as far as aquascaping. Before that, we just covered everything up until this point of the build, guys. So make sure you subscribe, hit the playlist, check out anything that you missed, so that way you are in tune and caught up with everything going on with the system. So without further ado, let's jump right into episode 8. So before we get too far, I'm going to go back and do a revision to episode 5, which included a walkthrough of the Be Easy manifold / the first ever closet water change station. So that's right, guys, water change station in the closet right behind the tank, plumbed through the wall to make my life easier when it comes to maintenance in the tank. So at this point, we are finally leak free. I've been fighting with the old brute cans. Ended up being an issue with the holes being drilled too big. Didn't realize it. Had leaks, tried to fix them, had to end up just replacing the cans with new cans, new seals, and just a new plan of trying to, prevent any water getting out of these cans. So at this point, we have officially made at least 2.5, almost 3 cans worth of salt water. Definitely have went through a lot of water draining them, leak testing, but we are finally fully functional, guys. So I'm really looking forward to enjoying the Be Easy lifestyle of the closet water change system. Now, one thing I want to mention, I did make some adjustments and some additions. First being is going to be some leak monitoring, not really control, but basically a safety measure, a safety net for me. With it being in the closet, if I happen to fall asleep or happen to walk in the house or son's here and I'm not home, I need somebody to know if there's water on the floor. And these little things from Amazon are like police sirens. Loud as hell, very effective, should get the job done. Now, the update as far as the cans, swapped out the bulkhead for uniseals. Unfortunately, uniseals still gave me a drip, so I ended up taking them out, lining them with silicone, pushing them in, putting the cans in place, and then re-siliconing on the inside and outside. So basically a triple seal, and it seems to get the job done. Now, another update, I mentioned before, too low of a water pressure for my rotary unit. Well, I did end up picking up a booster pump, and I have full control. Right now it is set to around 75 to 80 psi. I can turn it up to 90 if I want, but for now 75 to 80 is making water pretty quick. I can fill up a 30-gallon brute can in half a shift of work. Me working at home, I can start it in the morning, and by lunch that thing is already turning off. Another thing that was interesting to find out, the TDS, the tap water, is pretty damn clean. I mean, I'm only getting anywhere between 3 and 5 TDS once it's running, which is unusually low. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. If it is accurate, then hey, that means my tap water is damn near, ready to use for any kind of reef tank right out of the gate. So looking good. Now, as far as other improvements, well, the main thing was trying to get the most water out of these cans as I could. I found that using elbows and 90s just still was leaving too much water in the bottom of the can. So I ended up reducing it down, a threaded fitting and soft hosing. And I found that allowed the return pump to create a suction and keep the suction all the way down to less than 1 inch of water in each can. So definitely accomplished the goal. Now, as far as safety measures, that didn't change. Still using the wife saver solenoid to shut off the water, which also shuts off the booster pump. Does the same thing as the float valve, so still double redundant. And so far, anytime this can's filled up, it automatically stops on its own. So I'm almost 90% trusting it at this point, but still not gonna leave the water on full time. Once it's full, shutting the water off. Now, when it comes to the mixing station, as far as the saltwater portion, a couple of changes were made. First one being acquiring a heater and a different way of circulating the water. Now, this heater is still not the one I'm going to go with. It's a glass heater, definitely, an explosion. If it hits the air, I don't really trust it. So I'm going to upgrade that to a titanium heater. And then picked up a used gyro, guys. So go figure. Gyros have always been my favorite kind of flow. Never thought I'd be using one to mix the salt in my saltwater mixing station, but I found that the flow on the return pump recirculating the water just wasn't enough, and I didn't like the idea of burning that pump dry when I really needed to just move water from point A to point B. So other than that, water change station is rock solid, and as far as everything else, still the same. Still plumbed through the wall. Right goes to the tank for salt water, left still goes to the RO reservoir. So that's it. Version 2.0 is effective and fully functional. 3.0, who knows? You guys can come up with it. Let me know what you think. So the mission's simple, guys. It's Monday, also known as 20% off all fish at Sandy's Pet Shop in Louisville, Kentucky. But unfortunately on the way, I guess this guy was trying to beat me there. Whoever it was flipped the car, jumped out, ran off, somehow was not hurt. But this is just a random moment caught on camera, share with you all, pretty crazy. But back to the fish store, we have arrived. First time been in here in almost 3 years. That is a long time to be separated from the hobby and from, things that once was. And it was really interesting seeing some things were the same, display tanks were the same. Still the same bird that's been here since before I would join the hobby. This bird had to have been in this store. We need to break this guy out. He has to be, it's 15, 20 years in. Not sure what he did, but, maybe they found him guilty. But anyways, guys, it was really eye-opening seeing the price differences in the hobby now. Everything is more expensive, in some cases almost 3 times as much, than the prices I remember before. But the good thing is, still the same great people working here. A lot of them actually remember who I was, which was pretty cool. But the mission was simple. What fish did they have? What can I add to the tank? What can I try to save up for because of the prices? And ultimately, we ended up leaving here with a few items. So we're going to be back. We're going to tour some LFSs. But for now, just want to give you guys a quick look. First thoughts, the hobby's expensive now, and I'm going to have to get another job. I do something strange for some change. So before we get too far, let's go backwards in time a couple of weeks, or almost 3 weeks at this point. Like I said before, Instagram is on schedule. YouTube's a little behind because I want to see what happens and actually be able to share the results of some of the things I'm doing instead of as I'm doing them, if that makes sense. So for those that were curious, as far as the salt I'm using on the tank, I went with the Aquaforest hybrid salt. Now this salt's interesting because it actually includes probiotic bacteria in the salt itself. So that bacteria handles nutrients, phosphates, nitrates in the tank. So I was really interested in seeing how would this work on cycling a tank? How would it impact it, or would it impact it? It was to the point to where I actually reached out to Aquaforest and asked them, would this be an issue with starting a tank? They told me no. So here we go. We off and rolling, and we're going to find out how true that really is. Now, when it comes to the sand, I went with what I know. I love the larger grain Carib Sea special grade sand. This has been the only size sand that I've found could withstand the flow that I like in my tank. Unfortunately, I only got 20 pounds thinking, it was going to give me that 1/2 inch size sand bed, but I ended up needing more, and I didn't wait. Got another bag that was some smaller sand, and you're going to find out later in the video why that was a bad idea. But ultimately, guys, it was all about just getting some kind of substrate in the tank, to provide habitat for the wrasses that I want to keep, provide, additional surface area. And when you're adding sand, number one thing you got to do is have some kind of way of, clearing the water up as fast as possible. So removed all the media cups or trays from the sump and installed some good old filter socks, guys. I am not a person who believes in running filter socks 24/7. I definitely have not put them back in the tank after this, but they're to serve a purpose, and that's to polish the water and try to get any of the sand particles or any of that stuff out before we move forward with, next steps, meaning once the water's clear, adding biomedia, adding other things to the tank, and, putting those filter socks on standby just in case I ever need to do some major maintenance later down the line, or, need to polish the water. So that's pretty much what we did. Now, when it comes to the sand I used, ended up using live sand. Now, because of that, I had to make sure that the water salinity, temperature, all of that was up to par. So that way I didn't potentially kill any of the bacteria that was included. And after that, It's pretty much just dumping it in. Now, as I said before, this is gonna be weeks of, random clips and different things I was able to kind of document during this process. So don't let the timeline of this video kind of throw you off. It took a couple days for this to really kind of clear itself up before I can move forward with, the next step in my master plan. That's right. You guys know I always have a master plan. So in this case, it ended up being adding the biomedia next. So biomedia of choice is going to be Aqua4's Life Biofill. So this is also something I've never used before. You guys know I was always a big Skimmer's Pond Matrix kind of guy. And once I found out that there was Pond Matrix type media that was actually seeded with nitrifying bacteria already in it, I had to give it a try. So this is also something I've never used before. I've never used any of the Aqua4's, medias before, Rockwork, any of that. So this tank is a tank of first. And by first, also meaning the way I'm gonna cycle it. So as you guys can see, we have ammonia in a bottle. So that's right, I am not using any freshwater mollies. I'm not using any, dead shrimp or any other methods of, cycling tanks that have been used before in the hobby. In this case, I'm gonna try to do it, the cleanest way, the most, humane way that you wanna call it, by using bacteria, ammonia in a bottle, and then hopefully letting that just kind of cook, marinate, and just do what it has to do to get this tank cycled. So let's fast forward a couple of days. The tank's clear, or at least as clear as it's gonna be. So the filter socks have done the job. Time to go ahead and pull them out. This is another opportunity to kind of remind you guys of how happy I am to be able to access this sump from the front or side of the stand. I've been a fan of all-in-one tanks. I'm also a huge fan of tanks with sumps because of reasons like this. The amount of equipment, the amount of access that you have, and the room you have to be able to do things you want, you really just can't beat it. So as you guys can tell, media is installed, tons of flow. That media is loaded with bacteria, and hopefully that'll be enough to, get the job done. Now, when it comes to the main way of mechanically filtering the tank, decided to pick up some additional filter pads. Love this stuff. You can get it in bulk, cut it to size to match whatever, space you need it to match, put it in. Whenever it clogs, pull it out, throw it away. I'm kind of a guy that likes to run an open system, or at least as open as possible, but we still need to do a little polishing, so we're gonna end up using this filter. Now, it's gonna be the part of the video where I'm glad I put this on a little bit of a delay, because I noticed some issues during the cycle, and by issues, I'm talking about some self-inflicted problems. Adding ammonia to the tank, that's normal. You're supposed to add a food source for the bacteria, but what I didn't think about was breaking in the skimmer during this time. And you guys just think about the question you have to ask yourself. Skimmer looks great, great head of foam, but what is it pulling? There's no fish, there's no food, there's nothing else in the tank. And I didn't think about it at the time, but this is actually pulling out all of the beneficial bacteria, all of the things that I wanted in the tank to help do the cycle. So after the fact, I ended up realizing that and turning it offline, and also decided to remove the filter flaws from the tank, thinking that at this point, I am mechanically filtering, I am skimming out any and everything that is going to be beneficial for me cycling this tank, especially with the way I'm trying to do it, being a fishless cycle. I don't have, Pucani rock breaking down in organics naturally in the tank. I don't have the real reef rock that I had in my last system that, had dead organics or things that may have died off in shipping. Those natural food sources that are going to be available in the tank that allow you to be able to still run a skimmer, to still be able to filter your water mechanically. I didn't have those things. So, with this being my first time doing a real, true fishless cycle, I believe that was a learning experience I want to kind of share with you all. It may be common knowledge to people in the hobby. It may be common knowledge to you, but it kind of slipped my mind. So I just want to make sure I share this with anyone that's watching me on this journey. If you decide to do it this way, leave your skimmer offline. Don't worry about mechanically filtering anything. Just kind of leave everything in the tank, because if you don't leave it in there, and then you don't put it in there, then you're going to cause problems with your cycle. So what's going to be the solution? Well, pretty simple, guys. Just loading up on biodiversity in the 75 EXT. Bacteria in the bottle, also picking up some live rock rubble from the LFS. Any kind of seeded media, it should be all I need to help get everything kick-started, which honestly is already kick-started, but to help accelerate the process. But overall, not in a hurry. No fish in the tank, no reason to even rush it. Just gonna let it do its thing. But one thing I do want to mention to you all is the issue I had with the sand. I had 20 pounds of special grade, and I added 20 pounds of Fiji pink sand, not realizing the grain size, and it is way smaller, to the point to where these power heads in the flow, which is really high in my tank, has blowing sand all over the place. I am still fine-tuning it, still finding the sweet spots, and I'm getting better at it. But overall, it's gonna work, but it is gonna cause some, modifications needed in the tank. And by modifications, be easy feet are back in play. That's right. We have elevated all of the structures, the accent pieces on the sand bed. They were getting covered up and, sand blown over top of them. But elevating these the same as the main skate has appeared to do the trick. And honestly, I kind of like the look of it. They kind of remind me of little toadstool mushrooms. No matter what happens, the sand either blows through them, around them, or under them, but it does not cover them anymore. So ended up working out perfect. Where there's a problem, there's always a solution, right? Now I gotta tell you guys, even with the minor setbacks, if you even want to call them that, inconveniences is what I would say, tank still looks fantastic. Having salt, sand, water flowing, lighting, shimmer, and just tons of potential. This really may end up being my best work yet. And this is a tank that I'm really setting myself up to keep long term. I gotta try to break my own record. I don't have a good track record of tanks making it past the 2-year mark. For whatever reason, I just haven't been able to do it, but I'm on a mission this time. I'm on a mission to see what my tanks will look like year 2, year 3, year 4, fully grown out, fish big, colonies, all the good stuff. That's what I see and that's what I envision in this tank. And I'm glad to kind of bring you guys on the journey with me. And I'm really happy to, see the progress we made so far. It's been a long process getting this thing built out, and we are almost there. Now, if you guys notice something, there is an additional tank now beside the display. That's right, guys. We left the LFS with fish and a plan to add them to the tank, but I never said it was going to be to the display. So if you guys haven't figured it out yet, this is CJ's first time ever doing any kind of quarantine/observation setup. And like I told you, being removed from the hobby 3 years, I really wanted to try to improve my game and minimize my losses and try to avoid some of the mistakes that I had before, or at least catch those mistakes, before it gets too far out of hand. So run you guys through the quick setup. As you guys can tell, used media from the main display. That media has been running for a few weeks. It does have some beneficial bacteria on it that will help this little quarantine tank, which is a 20-gallon system that I found used. This whole quarantine setup is used. So I don't know if I should call it quarantine or observation because I am not medicating yet. But I did pick up a used auto top off Tunzi. So if I decide to run this tank long term, I won't have to worry about it. And when it comes to lighting, it's going to be an Amazon cheap little $15 deal. It's dimmable, controllable, has a timer built in on it. Can't beat it. It's going to serve the purpose, at least the purpose for, what I'm needing for on this tank. Now, another thing I wanted to make sure is that we had plenty of oxygen in here. I haven't had an opportunity to add a bubbler or anything else. So I figured dropping the water level, allowing dual filters to splash is giving me plenty of surface agitation, plenty of water movement to make sure that any bacterial blooms or any oxygen issues do not happen in the tank. Now, as far as monitoring the tank, also added a CChems ammonia badge, and we also added a heater and a thermometer, because I really don't trust heaters unless they're very expensive, and I don't have an expensive one on this observation tank. So the goal is simple, guys. Educate myself in the hobby, grow in the hobby, and try to prevent any major I lost all my fish type situations, which has happened to me a few times so far, and mainly just kind of trying to do it a different way. And with this little tank, one thing I've noticed is it's very easy to manage this amount of water, meaning only 20 gallons of water. With my water change station already up and running, super easy to do 50% water changes, 100% water changes, and make sure that this tank never becomes toxic or any kind of issue for housing all of the fish that I have in here. And as far as what I have in the tank, I will tell you guys later what the stocking plans will be. The main thing is making sure no casualties, no signs of stress, no flashing, no heavy breathing, making sure everyone's eating. And so far, I've been able to do that. And these guys are going to stay in here as long as they need to. Hopefully, not too much longer. Once I get a lid for the main display and all of the parameters are good, these guys are going to start getting moved over. But this is it, guys. Everyone's in. We are rolling. We got the first observation tank going, and I'm kind of excited to see how this journey is going to go. The hobby is a hobby within a hobby within a hobby, if you look at it. Of course, you got building the tank, which is a hobby. You got maintaining it, which is a hobby. And even an observation tank and maintaining this is its own hobby. So if you break it all up that way, it gives you multiple chances for success. And that's what I'm looking forward to. So at this point, guys, that's pretty much going to catch you guys up on what has happened over the last few weeks. I have been busy. And like I said before, if you've been missing it or wondering what's going on, I'm going to start trying to put some quicker updates up, whether it's the real or the short videos on YouTube or the short videos on Instagram. I'm going to try to mix those in with the bigger updates because it takes a long time to edit these updates, guys. And sometimes you just don't have enough to even put in video. So with this being a longer video, if you still made it this far, hit the like button. If you enjoyed it, do your thing, subscribe, all that good stuff. But we are rolling, we are cycling, we are quarantining, and we are moving forward with the build. So make sure, go back, check the playlist if you've missed anything, get caught up, slide over to CJ's Aquariums on Instagram for all the exclusive updates today, tomorrow, and just every day. That's where I post a little more content. So other than that, guys, we out. So hey, you can like, comment, subscribe. You guys keep doing what y'all do. Y'all be easy and happy reefing. Peace.